Jakub Izdebski, Interią. I'm here with Stephen Fry. He's in Krakow with his newest film, Treasure. It will be shown during opening night of Mastercard OFF Camera Film Festival. And you play, in Treasure, you play Edek, who is a Holocaust survivor.
Yeah.
He goes back to Poland with his daughter. And it's a film about his tragedy, her tragedy, but it's also a comedy.
I know, it seems strange to make a comedy about a subject as dark as the Holocaust and, you know, about a survivor of Auschwitz and showing his daughter where he grew up. But it is really a film as much as anything about a father and a daughter. She wants to see everything in Poland. The backstory, which we discover, is that, yes, I grew up as a Polish Jew in Łódź and was arrested and taken to Auschwitz camp and survived, and then went eventually to America and New York, where with my wife had a daughter played by Lena Dunham, and the wife sadly dies, her mother, so there's the two of us, father and daughter, in New York. And she's a journalist and a very modern kind of New Yorker. This is in 1990, roughly 1989. She wants to see where I grew up. She wants to see her roots, as Americans are very interested in their roots. And I don't want her to see it. I think she's insane. Why go back there? Why go back? And so it is a kind of comedy in me trying to stop her getting in the way of her trying to get, you know, why would a tourist go to Auschwitz? Why would you want to go to such a place? And it may be that some people find that hard to understand. I think recently, although it's a tiny kind of version of it, if you ask most people the 2 years, 1.5 years in which you were locked down during COVID, do you want to go back and talk about it? And do you talk about it? They say, no, just forget it. It was a bad time and it's behind us. And that's a human instinct, even if it is an absolutely existentially traumatic experience, and perhaps especially if it is an existentially traumatic experience, you want to put it behind you and you want to look forward, not back. And most of the survivors of the death camps I've spoken to, and of course there are not many left now, they're all in their 90s, they will talk because they know that the history must not forget what happened. But if you talk to their families, their children and their grandchildren say that they never talk about it to us. They just say, you don't want to know. Go look forward, look forward. My grandfather was like that. He was a Jew from Hungary, and his wife, my grandmother, from Austria. And they came to England and fortunately escaped the death camps and everything, though their parents didn't. And they also, if ever I asked, you know, so what was it like in the war? You don't want to know. You know, that was it. You don't want to know. But of course you do want to know. So that's part of the sort of charge of electricity between Edek and his daughter, is he doesn't want her to understand. And it's partly because he hasn't really come to terms with it himself, with what he's seen. And I think, although the film doesn't really address this, I think the reason is, if you were a survivor of a place like Auschwitz, it meant that you probably did things that you are ashamed of in order to survive. No one else would blame you. But for example, I mean, you know, if someone falls dead at your feet in the camp, you don't go and help them, or, you know, if they're fainted, because a guard will come and club you on the head with the side of his rifle. So you have to learn to be cruel. And then hunger makes cruel people. If you're really, really hungry, you will fight people for food. You and I would all do that, you know, in order to survive. It is a huge instinct. And then afterwards, you would not want to remember who you became, because it's not just that the Nazis were monsters. They turned other people into monsters. The pain of memory and the pain of such an experience is really enormous. And of course, my daughter in the film, she doesn't really understand that. She thinks I'm just being difficult. But she comes to understand it. She understands really something of what I went through. And I understand that her quest for knowledge and completion is a very honest one, and we sort of discover each other in that sense in the film. And yeah, so it's in every sense that modern cliche, a journey.
While working on Edek's character, did you base him on someone you know, maybe your grandfather? And you also said it was something called personal discovery. Was it, while working on this film, did you have something like this?
Yes, I mean, my grandfather didn't go to a camp, as I say, but he was a very similar kind of character to Edek in some ways. He was very funny, and he was very loud and amusing, and he had a great zest for life. He was different from Edek in that my grandfather believed once he had got to England and was a success, which he was in business, that he should have everything should be the best. So, you know, his watches and his suits and his shoes and everything was the most expensive and the most, because it was proof, you know, that he had made it. He had, you know, survived the possibility that, you know, so many of his family did not survive, but nonetheless he had that, you know, but that was Hungarian, which is very different. He used to say to me, a Hungarian Jew is the only person who can follow you into a revolving door and come out first. He was that kind of a person. The big family, and those that survived were all from Central Europe, either from Austria or Hungary or what is now Slovakia. And there was a sort of, you know, just a kind of love of food and life and music, and which was quite un-English, you know, in the 60s when I was growing up. English people were a bit dull, and, you know, unless it, you know, suddenly the Beatles exploded and the young people were more excited, but the older generation were a bit grey, and so my grandfather and the Jewish relations were very colourful, if you like. But the hardest part of playing Edek was having to learn Polish. Oh, not learn Polish, but learn some Polish speeches, you know, because he grew up in Poland, so arriving back in the country, he obviously was able to speak, and so I had to sound as if I vaguely understood the language.
And you also sing in Polish, right?
Oh, I hate singing so much. I cannot tell you. Every time I get a script and I think this is really good, I'm so looking forward to it, on page 40, suddenly he bursts into song, and I go, oh, God. I might as well, you know, it's like some actors, if they see a nude scene, they say that they're naked, he thinks, I'm not going to do this, or you'll ring your agent and say, I'll do the film, but I don't want to do the nude scene. Whereas I go, I'll do the film, I don't mind doing the nude scene, but I will not do the singing.
And he's the king of karaoke, right?
Yes, the king of karaoke is exactly what he is. So I had to pretend, I had to act someone who could sing, even though I can't. It was terrible.
You really must love the screenplay. When we see Edek, we could think that he's a very happy person, but there is this tragedy in history inside him. Yeah. So I wanted to ask, how do you combine tragedy and comedy? Not only in this movie, or you find comedy in tragedy?
I think life provides it for you. Life is tragicomic, and sometimes I will see a very serious film or television program, or even a soap, you know, a TV soap, in which, you know, there's a divorce and people are angry, and I will notice that there's no comedy in it. And to me, that is as if everybody had only one arm. I was thinking, why am I watching something where everybody has one arm? Is this about people with one arm? Because mostly in life, people have two arms, and yet they're not explaining why everybody has one arm. And I'm watching something in which nobody's laughing. You know, if you go to a market or to a factory, even, you know, even places where people are very poor, about 60% of the time, you watch their faces, they're making jokes with each other. They're laughing. Oh, God, what are you doing? Come on. You know, even if their life is difficult. And that's true of drug dealers. It's true of people who've survived Holocaust. You know, it is part of the human to be a mixture. And so anything that says this is a comedy, so it must be funny and can't be sad, is a lie. And anything that says this is a tragedy and so it can't be funny is a lie, because it's not representative of the truth. The truth, and that's why Shakespeare's so great. It's why Charles Dickens is so great, or James Joyce, or, you know, whoever it is that they have humour and tragedy suspended together in a delicate membrane, and it's that excitement of watching how life is like that.
And also I wanted to ask you, you worked with Polish actors during Treasure, including Zbigniew Zamachowski, so...
Zbigniew, yeah, Zachowski. It's Biggie. Is a genius and a just marvelous actor. He's brilliant in the film. He presents a face of Poland that is funny and sweet and friendly and charming and wise. And I remember seeing him in the Kieslowski Two Colors White and thinking, what an amazing actor. And I've seen him in other things as well, of course. And so it was a great honor to have him, and he was charming. When we went to Auschwitz, which is, of course, an extraordinary experience, we were all, I was thinking, and Lena was thinking, because we had Jewish heritage, and we lost members of our families in that place. And Zbigniew discovered that his grandfather was there as a Polish political prisoner. His grandfather was a communist, so obviously Nazi, and the Nazis didn't like him, and he was arrested and went to Auschwitz death camp, where he worked and survived. And he found the people who run the camp, whatever, they have these archives, and he found and photographed the actual piece of paper of his admission, and he was profoundly moved by that, because he didn't know, he didn't have the details. He knew his grandfather was a political prisoner of the Nazis, but didn't know he'd gone there. So that was amazing.